Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today is July the 24th, 2026, and I'm continuing with my discussions of the adventures of Odysseus, as told by the blind Greek poet Homer in the Odyssey, which has been remade by Christopher Nolan for Hollywood. And he's making a boatload of money, right? A truckload of money, although he is receiving a variety of uh, criticisms, but he's smiling all the way to the bank, nevertheless. It's his biggest box office to date. And yeah. But for me, I can't get tired of talking about the Odyssey. I read the book. I enjoyed the book. I've read it actually more than once. And, it's a page turner. It's a page turner. I read the translation by E.V. Rowe. And for me, especially now, um, I find it very interesting, and it applies to my life. The story of Odysseus. The Odyssey is about the story of Odysseus's journey, right? His 10-year journey to get home, and all the mishaps he faces. Uh, you know, and I'm going to talk about this particular scene. There's this particular book. It's divided. So the Odyssey is divided into books. In the the book is divided into a variety of books, but I'll call it scene for the sake of Hollywood and modern times, right? So it's the uh, it's the scene where despite all the curses, the curse by Poseidon, right? Poseidon had cursed Odysseus, and so he's just wandering the seas and can't get home, right? He cannot get home to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus and his kingdom. Odysseus is the king of Ithaca. Odysseus has he's so fulfilled his task, right? He defeated Troy. He was the one who strategized and came up with the idea of the Trojan horse to steal into the impregnable walls of Troy. And of course, they ended up slaughtering and destroying. They ended up destroying Troy. But now Odysseus is trying to get back home, but he can't, and he's on this perilous 10-year circuitous journey, right? Because he's been cursed by Poseidon. But Odysseus gets lucky, right? He gets lucky when he comes on to the island of Aeolus. Aeolus is one of the gods as well. He's a lesser god. He's called the Keeper of the Winds. Aeolus is Keeper of the Winds. So he keeps. He's the one who manages, superintends the winds, right, on the seas. So Aeolus favors Odysseus. So he gives Odysseus a gift, right? A gift of it's an oxhide bag, and he traps all the stormy winds that have been keeping Odysseus from getting home. So he traps all the stormy winds, gathers them, and puts them in this bag, right? He puts them in this bag and he seals it up and gives it to Odysseus. He leaves just one wind, right? The gentle west wind, free to, just guide him back, to push his ship back home to Ithaca, to direct him back home to Ithaca. So all Odysseus and his men had to do was steer the course, right? To steer the course and get back home to Ithaca. So Odysseus, jealously guards that bag, right? He guards the bag. It's a huge bag, oxhide bag, and all the winds, the stormy winds that had been preventing him from getting home, were now trapped. And so all they needed to do was steer the course. So Odysseus, in fact, now sees Ithaca. It's within sight, and he feels safe, and so he falls asleep. He feels safe. He falls asleep. However, Odysseus's men, right? Odysseus's men who keep getting him into trouble, they now feel jealous. They're suspicious. They think Aeolus gave Odysseus a bag of gold. That bag that Odysseus had been holding on to, and he refused to show them what was inside, was filled with gold. And so they were jealous, and they decided they were going to open open the bag and steal some gold for themselves. That was what they thought it was, a bag of gold, and they were envious. They were jealous that, okay, that Aeolus had given Odysseus this bag and he didn't want to share it with them, and he was just holding on to it. And they, so when Odysseus was asleep, they decided to grab the bag and open it up. So when they opened it up, all the winds that Aeolus, the keeper of the winds, had trapped on behalf of Odysseus now came out. All the storms that they just came out, and they're now, they're now ravaged by a tempest, tempestuous winds. All the storms came out, and then even though Odysseus, before he fell asleep, he had just sighted Ithaca, right? They had just seen Ithaca. They were almost home. They were almost there, right? In America, we'd say a snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory, right? They were almost there. All they had to do was stay the course, right? Nothing seemed like success seemed impossible. It was, it was within their sight. They could see it. But hey, Odysseus's men, they snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory by opening the bag that had trapped all the stormy winds, because they were jealous. They thought Odysseus was hiding gold from them. And so the stormy winds sweep their ships back to the island of Aeolus. And so Aeolus was stunned that, look, your victory, you were certain to get home. So Aeolus was pissed with Odysseus and refuses to help him a second time. He refuses to help him a second time, determined that, okay, hey, this is terrible. You're really cursed. You've been cursed by Poseidon. So Aeolus refuses to help him a second time. Now, this portion is very significant to me because, as I was saying, just like Odysseus, I've been on a journey in America. I've spent 27 years in America. I come from a loving home. I'm not an American citizen, but that was not my plan to come and become an American citizen. I came to study, right? Originally as an F1 student, and I had a goal, right? I accomplished my goal, and I'd gone through some perils and travails, and I haven't even been back home to celebrate with my family, and I'd just been looking forward to celebrating with my family. After I graduated from law school, from George Washington University Law School, I got my Ivy League degree. I got a variety of degrees, things I didn't plan for, but law was was always in my heart since childhood. I got my law degree, and I was now getting ready to go home. I had this great job with the federal government, United States Department of Defense, and the Department of Navy. I got these new offers. Then I got an offer in May, right? I had a variety of offers. I had my pick of jobs. Everybody was offering me a job, was offering me a position in the US federal government, different agencies, right? One of the jobs I was also offered had a base salary of $250,000, a director's position, all of these things. And then I tell somebody who was my emergency contact at work, so somebody close to me. It was not my family, we're not related. That's Howard University professor Jide Iwarire, right? He's because I thought he was responsible. He postures as a pastor, that he's an elder at this place, 4C Bible Church. And so I tell him, because he's always solicitous, he seems solicitous, he's always inquiring about my career. I didn't know it was out of envy, out of some sense of rivalry, because he has this rivalry with my mother. So I was excited, I was happy. I thought, wow, that I had just been made this great offer. I had all these great offers, job offers, right? Great job offers. I was picking. My challenge was to pick one position, right? This was May 2023. Jide Iwarire gets jealous, gets angry, right? He decides to, for some reason, harebrained reason, right? It's my family believes it was out of his jealousy and out of evil, right? His wicked heart. He goes to file an emergency evaluation petition. I don't live in his house. I live alone, right? And I rightfully set boundaries for him, because he started stalking and harassing me, became overly intrusive in my federal government top secret classified job. So I set boundaries for him. So he colluded with these bunch of people, right? crooked government officials in Montgomery County in Maryland, right? Because he's lived there for 40 years. And then he does an emergency petition. Next things, what could not go wrong? And I was also planning on going home. I planned to surprise my mom, my holiday. I told my boss, right? My boss, the Auditor General of the Navy, Donjet Gilmer, I told her, hey, I'm going to do a holiday vacation back home. I wanted to surprise my mother that I'd not seen since the 90s, right? I hadn't seen my family, right? I was successful. I'd done what I was supposed to do, and I was going to celebrate with my family. Next thing, I was raided by 40 cops in my home on false accusations. This guy, Howard University professor Jide Ware, went to lie that I threatened to shoot him, something that never happened, right? He's probably struggling with dementia, an octogenarian. He doesn't know his age. He doesn't tell us his real age, right? My family says he's older. So I was raided. I was injured. I was shot in the head. And so it's been 3 years, right? I've been held captive in the state of Maryland, right, for over 3 years on false accusations, right? And I was robbed. So you see, that was like snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. My success, I'd garnered so much success, right? And just like Odysseus, he had been victorious in the Trojan War. The reason he left his family was the 10-year Trojan War, and he'd won, right? And he'd gone through all these perils, right? And now Aeolus finally helped him and gathered the stormy winds that had been preventing him from going home. And it was just within, sight of his kingdom, his family, and the people closest to him, his men, right, sabotaged his success, just like me, right? Someone close to me, Jide Ware, right, sabotaged my success, right? And again, it won't be the first time for me, because just prior to that, like over a decade, right? Prior to that, over a decade ago, I went through a divorce, right? Just again, at the same time, I was in my last year of a biological science program, an engineering program at Columbia University. Yep, it seemed crazy to go to med school. That year, I was supposed to take the MCAT. I had worked very hard in STEM at Columbia University, right? And the year I was supposed to take my MCAT, right, graduate with my biological science degree from Columbia University, take my MCAT, that was just before that was, while I was registered in school, my ex-wife filed divorce papers. She leaves me. So it's stunned me, because we've been married for years. We've been together for 7 years, right? So I was in shock. So she, because a few days before, right, she walks out, she comes to me, and we had a happy marriage. No violence whatsoever. Not one day of violence. Not one day. 7 years, because I'm not a violent person. I can't be in a relationship with someone who's violent either. So it was peaceful, and we were both successful. I had supported her success, right? I had written her application to law school. She graduated from Harvard Law School. I had encouraged her to go to law school. So she comes to me and walks up to me and tells me, people are saying when you get into, when you become a doctor, that after you become a doctor, you're going to abandon me and go after a younger woman, right? You're going to abandon me and leave me for a younger woman. At this period, just because I didn't want controversy or fights, I didn't get it. I didn't engage with my ex-wife in arguments. I didn't do that. Maybe she was just pondering over something, because it seemed ridiculous to me, right? So I didn't respond. I didn't say anything to her, because it just sounded silly, especially since she was in her 20s, right? At this time, I couldn't see the future, right? I couldn't see the future, because right now she was a young woman, and I couldn't see what would happen after I became a doctor, and then I decided to live my, the person I was with at that time was in her 20s. That was all I saw. I didn't know what was going to happen in the future, how I was going to suddenly leave her for a younger woman, after I become a doctor. I still had like at least 5 years to go to becoming a doctor, right? So I couldn't see the future, right? So it was bizarre, but that was another period. and that ended my journey towards med school. What was ironic is I had zero interest in becoming a doctor. She was the one who persuaded me to abandon the 3-year guaranteed scholarship for law school, which I earned in 2009, and that I should go and become a doctor because she was a lawyer, right? And I persuaded her to become a lawyer. She had been a teacher, and so she and her family started saying, "Hey, why do you want to be a lawyer like your wife?" Without her telling them that, look, I was the one who persuaded her to be a lawyer because I made the decision. I planned my life that, okay, I want my wife to be a lawyer like me so we could do business together. We could do things. She could think, right? She could be my better half. I'm thinking, and she's supporting my thoughts. She knows, she's able to counter. She's a good sounding board. She's able to counter my decisions and work together. So she and her family start saying, "Hey, why do you want to be a doctor, a lawyer like your wife? You should balance it off. Go and be a doctor." So me, after how many years of education, after my age, I didn't, I'm a curious person, so I go ahead, I start from scratch. Sciences I'd never studied. I started to study science. I did mathematics, right, at one of the most competitive schools in the world, at Columbia University, right? So I was focused on it and I did well. The year I was meant to graduate and then take the MCAT to go to med school. Finally, after years, the person closest to me snatches defeat, right, uh, out of the jaws of victory. So it wasn't the first time for me. So as I read the Odyssey, that journey, that arduous journey, it's like I find it so relatable, so relatable. And so this is not to cast aspersions on anybody's character. We all go through our journeys and we have our challenges. And this is what the Odyssey, when I read the Odyssey, this is what it does for me. Odysseus loved his men. He was very close to his men. And it was these same men, but they don't realize how they harmed him, right? His biggest dream, because he didn't even want to go for the Trojan War, right? I've done a video explaining how he had feigned madness, right? He had feigned madness. That's in the Greek mythology, right? It's not in the Iliad, but he had pretended he was crazy when when Agamemnon and Menelaus, when they came to get him, that they should go to war. He pretended he was crazy, but so he could avoid going to war. So he eventually goes, but the Greeks felt they needed him because Odysseus was known for his intelligence and he was very clever, and of course he was the one who provided them the strategy that led to their success through the Trojan horse. So this is why the Odyssey, when I read the Odyssey, I can't get enough of it because I find it so relatable, right, in my journey, my 27 years journey in America, and I've been held captive, right? Literally held captive. I have a family. I have a lunatic professor, Howard University, who's clearly not my family, claiming he's my family, he's my uncle. The family is waiting there for me in Nigeria, stunned. And there's this crooked state of Maryland, and but importantly, it's the people close to me that have been sabotaging me. The two most difficult, challenging episodes of my life, right? It's people that were close to me that should have been there. They're the ones who sabotaged me. And there's a saying in my culture, Yoruba, it says "Chota ileo bakmani, ota ita oli renikba." So it's saying that literally it translates. I paraphrase that if the enemy in your household does not kill you, the enemy, you don't have to worry about the enemy, the external enemy. They don't have the power to kill you. It's the enemy in your household, close to you, right? That's who can kill you. That's who can sabotage you because they know your secrets. They're the ones that you would let your guard down for. Just like Odysseus, right? Odysseus had the bag, but he trusted his men, and he went to sleep before them. And while he was sleeping, that's when they go for the bag and open it and destroyed his chances of getting back home, which was just within sight, right? Just within sight. He had just seen Ithaca, right? He had just seen Ithaca before he went to sleep. My name's Olurotimi Osha. I hope you get to read the Odyssey. If you haven't, I'll keep you posted. Thank you.